That shit nasty, dog. Yo, welcome back to You're Watching Lou. Today we got the insect tier list. You feel what I'm saying? I've been peeped like tier lists. Oh, like a year ago, I think. Like with the snake John and shit like that. He fire. I love the way that this person or the team of people put this shit together. Make this shit really like ingestible. This shit look nasty as fuck though. I ain't gonna lie. Hit that like button if your ex do look like that. Hit that subscribe button if your current boo don't look like that. You feel what I'm saying? Let's get it started.
Play of the game.
That shit's scary looking. That shit real life scary looking. Oh lord. Play of the game.
I need healing.
Insects are one of the most broken factions the game has ever seen. Nowhere else in nature will you find such an incredible concentration of abilities that are not only overpowered, but also extremely unique.
Facts.
It's tough to even know where to start when talking about what makes insects such a successful group, because in a lot of cases, it's not just that their individual abilities are overpowered, but some of them feel like they should be mutually exclusive, since they're just insanely OP when used in combination with one another. You'll see what I mean once I get into the tier list, but first, a brief overview of the insect faction's general attributes and history.
Would y'all rather be an insect, a bird, a mammal, or a reptile or an amphibian? You feel what I'm saying? Like, I think I would prefer to be the mammal, obviously, but like, actually take mammal out of it. You can't be a human. Fuck out of here. Would you rather be an insect, a bird, a reptile, or an amphibian? At that point, I'm an amphibian all day. You feel me? I'm a dolphin. Tell you shit.
Insects
like I'm
were
coming
added
out the
to
water
game
late.
during the early Carboniferous expansion. The devs bumped up the atmospheric oxygen level, which allowed members of the arthropod faction to adopt larger sizes and more costly abilities. And while most of the arthropod player base was trying to dominate the land by leveling up their size, a small offshoot of the crustacean player base...
My fault, I had to move my mic a little bit, you feel what I'm saying? Was in the way. I'm dead booling right now. Let me sit up.
To unlock an ability never before seen.
Like I'm cooling right now. I said booling. Yo, I be talking like I'm dead ass. Like, you feel what I'm saying?
The ability to fly. The air became entirely their domain for the time being, and would remain that way until reptiles unlocked the ability several expansions later. Insects are extremely diverse in their abilities and stat spreads. In fact, they're so diverse that it's impossible to include them all in a single video.
Okay.
I'll be keeping things fairly generalized, but truth be told, many of the groups I'll be discussing today have so many standout members that they could...
I'm not gonna lie, insects will be top 2. Like, I would either be a...
So
but reptiles are fire.
General attributes, but there are a few commonalities. Being members of the arthropod faction, all insects are granted the exoskeletal armor perk, which greatly raises their AC compared to soft-bodied builds of similar sizes, with the only downside being a massive reduction in those same defensive stats for a short time every time the player levels up. This makes insects quite tanky on average, allowing them to excel in combat. The insect build also has access to the
these
compound
shits are
eyes
so
perk,
nasty.
which grants them vastly improved awareness compared to other arthropods like scorpions and centipedes. With 360-degree vision, their ability to avoid obstacles, dodge attacks, and pursue targets while flying is far superior to most other flyers. This enhanced perception perk is important because insects tend to have naturally high stealth.
For sure, yo. Y'all ever try to kill a fly? I ain't gonna lie though. I'm a killing fly expert. You feel what I'm saying? Like, here's a tip and trick. Get a spray bottle, right? Empty it out, put water in that jar, just wet their wings. Like, all that flying rah-rah shit, bro, fly around me now with them wet wings. You feel what I'm saying? Like, come on now. Like, yeah, come on. Like, that's my trick at least. I don't try to look like they're flying around. Cool, I'm gonna catch you though. I'm gonna wet them wings.
So in order to compete with other insect builds, acute vision is required. We've only just scratched the surface of the insane abilities insects have access to, though. For a more in-depth look, let's get into the tier list. At the bottom of the tier list, we have the silverfish. The silverfish is the most primitive insect build still in existence. It kind of blurs the line between what is and is not considered an insect. And not in a good way.
Oh, it's a crustacean.
Unlike other flightless insects, which decided to respec and drop the flight ability in favor of more refined strategies, the silverfish build actually never had access to it in the first place. Aside from having an
ants used to be able to fly? No, that's terrifying. Ants could fly before? Nah, hold on.
They don't really have any of the abilities that make
water.
They do not have wings and have essentially no combat abilities. They have fairly low defenses and get bodied left and right by pretty much everything, with their only useful stat being their decently high movement speed. Their special ability allows them to gain XP from eating cellulose and lignin, meaning they can farm XP from wooden structures, which normally don't grant any experience.
That's valid.
This ability would be fairly powerful in forest biomes, but because they're such weak combatants,
they can't
tend
do
to
nothing.
actually stick to urban areas, feeding on things like paper and cloth, and the relative safety of houses, apartments, and office spaces. Even there, they aren't completely safe though. And while no build is ever truly safe in the insect meta, the silverfish's extreme lack of useful abilities places it
spiders don't scare me, but they're just...
That's honestly the only insect build I believe deserves an F tier ranking. Most insects are quite viable, and even the less viable ones tend to have at least a few useful things going for them. Even if those things aren't necessarily
So don't be reincarnated as a
First
shit.
in D tier, we have the Phasmid build, which includes walking sticks and leaf mimics. These builds sport what are unquestionably some of the most impressive camouflage abilities in the entire game.
Have anyone seen that before? I've never seen some shit like this before. Nah, that looked like a... I would just think that's a tree, like a stick.
Second only to color-changing builds like the octopus and chameleon. As impressive as these are, though, the question I constantly end up asking is this really necessary? Because with the exception of insects which deliberately lower their stealth as part of the aposematic coloration strategy, insects as a whole already have an above-average stealth.
That is true.
And are usually able to maintain this while still speccing into other equally impressive abilities. Their camouflage can only take them so far. While they're near undetectable while remaining motionless, walking sticks still need to move to find food. And while they do mimic the movement of a swaying leaf or branch, this certainly isn't perfect. In fact, if they're ever caught in an environment where camouflage doesn't match as well, their instincts to sway and move can actually end up giving their position away even more, rather than aiding in their attempts to hide. Some phasmids do possess chemical defenses, but as we'll see further up the tier list, this attack is quite mild compared to the heat some other insects are packing. Phasmids have a similar game plan to sloths, complete with all the major flaws this strategy is.
I would love to be a sloth.
Although at least phasmids don't completely forego all common sense and make a dangerous trek to the forest floor once a week just to poop. Next in D tier, we have the Lepidopterans, the faction which includes moths, butterflies, and skippers.
Nah, that's a fire.
These may seem like absolute bottom tier builds. They're among the most vulnerable builds in the game when it comes to combat, with extremely squishy defensive stats and utterly abysmal offensive abilities.
But they're fast.
Many of the larval forms of these builds are 100% defenseless and have a mobility stat in the single digits, literally the freest kills in the game. However, the Lepid player base is quite crafty and has come up with a few ways of at least sort of mitigating
Talk to me, what they do.
Caterpillars and adult lepids alike can adopt quite convincing disguises. Some designed to help them blend in, and some designed to intimidate.
Yeah, that looked like a snake.
These strategies often don't hold up against high
caterpillars look like a snake?
Some caterpillars spec into quite potent defenses, like spines and toxins, which make them simply not worth the potential damage to take on. And credit where credit is due, even though they still are fairly defenseless, butterflies and moths do have excellent mobility, and can fly much greater distances than most insect builds. This enables them to avoid high conflict areas of the map, and reach higher quality loot that might be too rare for most players to rely on.
Nah, I love how he explains
this. In addition to being highly customizable for
what is that? What is this? What is this? This is why, no cap, this is why for my life I will be a city boy. Like, I am not going to no woods. You see this? I'm too dark for that. Like, word, like, nah. Like, nah.
Also just make them look much larger than insects.
I'm too black for this, I ain't gonna lie, because this is wild.
This way to attack.
What the fuck is this?
But ultimately, lepids still take plenty of L's, and most high-tier insect builds have quite oppressive
bats just stomp no
definitely a below-average faction.
Like, bats stomps these no
diff. That's actually it for D tier, and I know it might seem like we're moving up the tier list quickly, but again, insects are a massively successful faction. And are going to be concentrated in the higher tiers.
Word. Cockroaches.
C tier, we have the cockroach. The cockroach is the ultimate survivor, which opted to spec into mobility, stealth, and a
cockroaches are wild.
Multitude of elemental resistances.
I thought he was going to stick on that shit longer.
While they don't pack much heat, their flat shape allows them to easily wedge themselves into locations that are extremely difficult for other players to attack them in. They're rather clumsy flyers, but they do have an above-average ground movement speed, enabling them to quickly scurry to cover if they see a predator player approaching.
Oh, that shit looks so
However,
nasty!
when caught out in the open or backed into a corner, they're fairly helpless and easily one of the most vulnerable builds in the entire insect faction. They're also somewhat carried by human mains, making temperate and tundra servers viable for them, because really, as impressive as their toxin and radiation resistance abilities are, they're quite vulnerable to the cold, and would still be mostly confined to jungle servers if not for humans unlocking the fire control ability. The biggest variants may be able to tank one or two hits, but even then, with no way to fight back,
that's a
they're still pretty
cockroach?
screwed
Oh
if
my
they fail to
god! Thank you! Oh my gosh, all these shit's just nasty!
A fearsome-looking generalist build, which appears to have a giant pair of mandibles on its rear end, called Tierzoo. As fearsome.
Yo, I don't like insects. Like, I don't like insects. Like, these should just be nasty. I just want to kill them. Like, I just want to eradicate. Oh, why are they necessary? You feel me? Like,
these Tierzoo forceps are. If we actually check the earwig's base stats, we quickly notice that, just like all of its other stats, its power stat is actually quite mediocre.
Oh, okay.
As menacing as the Tierzoo are, the actual piercing damage they can deal is fairly minimal, and can even be deflected by the most basic of armor. And even against builds without armor, the damage is so low that
bro,
larger
just
builds
eat
still
you.
don't really need to
Come with his tongue.
approaching an earwig, and can attack without restraint.
Sounds real loud.
Still, just because they can doesn't mean they do, as the earwig's intimidation factor alone is oftentimes enough to protect it from conflict. And credit where credit is due, the forceps are actually fairly decent in matchups against soft-bodied insects, and allow the earwig to carry their target. And while it may seem silly to have opted for rear-facing weapons instead of the more typical forward-facing ones like mandibles and rostrums, the position does actually serve a purpose, in that it allows earwigs far greater access to burrows and tight spaces, where they can hide out and avoid conflict altogether.
Because it's on
Of
the
all the weapons insects have access to, Tierzoo might be some of the most unorthodox, which probably contributes to its ability to intimidate other players. However, I think to get out of mid-tier, earwigs need to actually have the ability to back up their threat display. They would do well to spec into some sort of venom. Venom-infused stings are a fairly common attribute for insects, so this feels like
no
a bit
cap.
of a
Am I the only one that like this deadass curls their skin? Like, this shit is crawling my skin. I feel like they're next to me. Like,
opportunity. So, while certainly a viable mid-tier, don't overestimate this build's abilities.
there we go.
At
I
the top
fuck
of
with
C
crickets
tier,
and
we've got the
grasshoppers.
orthopterans, including grasshoppers, crickets, and katydids.
I don't know what a katydid
These are the
is.
first mobility-centric
What the fuck is
builds on our
Katie?
list.
That sound like a white.
While they're quite capable flyers, their true power comes
That sound
from their
like a
saltatorial
human.
hind legs rather than their wings. Flight is an excellent defensive
I be
ability,
forgetting this camera
as
be
it
on
allows
sometimes,
users
man.
to get out of reach of an attack's range. But this utility is lessened if their ability to get airborne has too much startup lag. And so instead of using their wings to get themselves up into the air, a powerful jump enables the orthopteran mains to escape vertically at instant speed. Their excellent vision makes it extremely difficult to get within striking range without alerting them. And because their jump has such excellent frame data, landing an ambush strike on an orthopteran can feel near impossible at times. And even if a player does manage to secure a grab, their powerful hind legs can function as quite an effective combo breaker. The spines on their legs
they don't creep me out as much as
their
the
kicks can
other
deal,
ones do.
meaning that if a grasshopper
I
can
fuck
tank
with
the first few
grasshoppers.
hits of an ambush attack, they may be able to turn the tide of a confrontation and escape after dealing serious damage to the attacker.
Oh, that actually
With that
looks
said,
nasty.
I think there are a few flaws in their strategy, which I think keeps them out of the upper tiers.
What is it?
Grasshoppers can jump so far that there's really no way of knowing what sort of situation they're about to put themselves in. In a similar manner to the flying fish, using such a drastic escape option can sometimes end up putting you in a worse position than you were before.
Facts.
Especially if your local meta has a lot of spider players, and although they do present a challenge, most predator players aren't disrupted by the grasshopper's kicks, and can either tank the damage outright or one-hit the grasshopper before it even has a chance to
Nah,
retaliate.
they fucking that nigga up.
At the bottom of
bugs?
B tier, we have the hemipterans, a diverse order of insects with a few things in common, including generally
Are
having
these?
high.
Yo, these things ain't real. You making these like nah, like these things. This is why I'm so happy I live in the city. I don't know how I would live it like in the country. This shit
somewhat
son.
shield-shaped. However,
I would
the
have
most
that
notable
raid
thing
on
is that
me
rather than
everywhere I go.
slicing or pinching mouth parts, the hemiptera
Like everywhere I go, son.
rostrum, perfect for puncturing through tough surfaces. For the majority of hemipteran builds, this allows them to farm XP from sources that are normally hard to access, like
Oh, they
the
got a
energy-dense
stinger, like
sap
a-
inside trees and stems,
They got a-
or the starch inside of seeds. However, there are some hemipterans which use their sharp rostrum to deliver a venomous bite that is able to pierce through armored targets. Their venom is powerful enough to one-shot just about any other insect, and can even deal severe damage to larger builds. The only major shortcoming here is that these so-called assassin bugs tend to actually have fairly low stealth, opting
word?
for the aposematic intimidation defense I mentioned earlier. And
with
on
the
top
color.
of all that, they have fairly low mobility, making actually ambushing another player kind of difficult if they're actually paying enough attention to simply dodge the attack.
Did he just one-shot him?
Some do break this trend though, and opt for both better camouflage and high aquatic
Did he
mobility,
just kill a
making
frog?
them some of the most fearsome aquatic builds in the game. On the herbivore side of
Did
things,
did I just see a bug, an insect kill a frog? Nah, man.
Hemipterans tend to fare a bit worse. They usually still have fairly low mobility and low stealth, and their defenses may be higher than the average, but are nowhere near as impenetrable as some of the builds higher on this list. They tend to rely on a chemical defense similar to some phasmids, which is where they get the name stink bugs from. However,
okay.
similar to phasmids, these defenses also tend to be a bit lacking, and often fail to deter attackers. So certainly a group with some standout members, and fine
Are
for
like
XP
beetles
farming,
in this group?
but
That
still
look like a
nothing too
beetle.
broken.
What the fuck is this?
And topping off B tier, we have the Neuroptera, a rather clumsy build with
Neuroptera.
some pretty pathetic looking base
Okay,
stats,
max stealth?
genuinely one of the least agile flyers in the entire game. However, looking at the final form of this build paints a highly misleading picture of its capabilities.
Nah, these stats look
the
trash.
larval form, which is the form they spend the vast majority of their time as, is a brutally effective predator build for any player who prefers the camping playstyle.
Oh.
Taking a look at the larva's stats,
No, that's crazy. Nah, the stats are crazy. So they just lose all of this version of this, John? Low-key, this version. Nah, these insects are fire.
we see that they have incredibly high power and stealth for their size. Antlions have a devastating, venomous
they're
bite,
called antlions?
which they use to one-shot unsuspecting players before draining all of their life points with their hollow jaws. Because of their ability to construct pitfall traps, their passive stealth rating is extremely high, making their ambush playstyle unbelievably effective. As if escape wasn't hard enough,
burrowed
once the
into
prey
the
gets caught in
ground?
their trap, the antlion even has the ability to launch projectiles to stun its target, making escape a near impossibility. I have an entire video dedicated to the overpowered abilities of Neuropteran larvae.
Nah, they
In
seem
short,
OP.
They are what the earwig pretends to be. If you took the earwig Circe, put them in front, and made them sharper and gave them deadly venom to boot, you'd have an antlion.
Nah, that's
So
OD.
why the weak adult form? Having spent all of their evolution points optimizing their larval form, they spend hardly any time at all as adults. They don't even have the ability to eat in this form, and really only exist to be a vessel that allows players to find each other and complete the mating questline, something they lack the ability to do in their much less mobile larval form.
Oh, wow.
So while I do think it'd be more impressive
So
if
they only
didn't
go into
take
this
such
form
a
to
massive
fuck.
cut to their
That's
power
what's
level during
up.
their final level up, there's no denying that for the vast majority of their playtime, these builds are an absolute menace to encounter.
Dead ass. That sounds like a menace. Mantis?
At the
Nah,
bottom of the
praying
list, we
mantis
have
be
a personal
wild.
favorite of
Wee!
mine,
Yo!
mantises.
Wee!
Mantises have a fairly straightforward playstyle consisting
Beat that
of
nigga
slashing
ass.
and grabbing their
Yep,
targets
beat that nigga ass.
using powerful spiked raptorial forelimbs. If we take a look at the Mantis' stats, we see that
Damn. They're just dumb. That's it. Like, that's the only thing. They don't move like that and they a little dumb. But they don't move like that and they dumb because, word, they like, yo, we with it. Like, what's up?
the
That's
Mantis
crazy
has
though,
one of
for
the
real.
highest base power stats of any non-venomous insect. It also has a stealth stat similar to that of a walking stick, which it desperately needs in order to be able to get within striking range of its targets. Its clumsy flight and slow ground movement speed
Mantises
makes
can
chasing
fly?
prey basically impossible. However, what
I
they
didn't know they
lack
could
in
fly.
movement speed, they easily make up for with strike speed. The
Yeah,
Mantis'
they-
strike is lightning quick,
Nah.
to the point that it's easily able to hit targets that are normally considered
No, my son
hopelessly
is in a
As
boxing
powerful as
stance.
these
My
strikes
son's
are,
like,
one weakness of this strategy is
Nah.
that the rapid attack doesn't immobilize the target, and actually brings them within range of a counterattack. And while the Mantis' large size enables it to tank most counterattacks, attacking a venomous target can end up being a
Yeah.
serious blunder for a Mantis player. So definitely a powerful high tier
Nah,
predator,
I mess with-
but
I'm not
one
gonna
that's
lie,
so
I mess
invincible
with
that
mantises.
Mantis mains can get careless.
I mess with mantises. True flies.
Next in A tier we have the flies.
Yeah.
This
Flies
does
are
get a bit
OP.
confusing due to the amount of other
Okay, so all of these flies are included. Oh wait.
Other builds that use the word fly.
Okay, so a bot fly, a house fly, a deer fly, and a mosquito and a horse fly. These are the flies we're talking about. Yo, I swear I hate these flies the most. Like the ones that be like in your ear, and mosquitoes. Mosquitoes, who made them?
In their name. But this group, the true flies, are defined by a very specific feature. True flies only have 2 wings.
Oh, word.
This might seem like a major trade-off. But while it does leave them more vulnerable to having their flight ability disabled from taking damage, the perk they unlock in return is more than worth the risk.
What they unlock?
Instead of a second pair of wings, flies swap them out for halteres, a sensory structure that grants flies an insanely powerful buff to their aerial maneuverability and their evasion. Their superior aerobatics make them all
but you see, that's why you just have to spray these motherfuckers' wings with a little bit of water so they can't move as much. You feel what I'm saying? You ever seen a fly? Like, I love watching them struggle. I ain't gonna lie, I'm sadistic as hell like that. Like, I'll spray their wings, I'll watch them on the ground, try to dry them up like stupid. You should never came in my house. Stupid. For real though, like for real, I ain't gonna lie.
Impossible to land a hit on midair, and also enables
That's
predator
why I don't
fly
even
variants
try.
such as the robber fly to launch incredibly precise attacks mid-flight.
Wait, there's
and take
predator
on
flies?
that would normally be too powerful to confront head-on, but are unable to effectively counterattack during flight. However, most flies are either scavengers or parasites, using their quick mobility and superior reaction speed to weave past the defenses and avoid the sweeping counterattacks of larger players. While they do have an extremely short lifespan, there's no denying that they make the most of the time they do have, and are one of the most efficient and evasive builds in the entire game.
Oh, look
But
at his
while flies
frogs.
are excellent aerial combatants, they are no match for the ultimate aerial hunter build.
I mess with dragonflies.
Is similar to the crocodile in that it is one of the most well-optimized PvP builds that has ever existed in the game. It's already such an efficient build that across several balance patches and game expansions,
I knew I liked them for a
Dragonfly has
reason.
seen very few changes.
They're
to
low-key my favorite insect.
They simply aren't necessary, as the Dragonfly is already equipped to deal with just about anything the devs throw at it. So what is it about the Dragonfly that has given it such a competitive edge?
Let me see these stats. Let me see these stats.
Dragonflies have the best aerial maneuverability of any build in the game. And the highest top flight speed of any insect.
Nah, they be moving.
Unlike most insects, dragonflies have spec'd into the ability to move their wings independently of each other, which grants them the ability to move in any direction without needing to turn and face that
omnidirectional.
Meaning they can strafe mid-flight and even fly backwards. This ability makes their flight more energetically demanding than it is for other insects. So this is a high commitment, high reward playstyle. In order to ensure a proper payoff for their incredible agility, dragonflies have also spec'd into what is arguably the best vision of any arthropod. Extremely large, high resolution eyes that take up basically their entire head, granting them full 360-degree vision.
Facts.
This allows them to track all potential targets around them with ease, and allows them to see
You're not going to show me their stats
before they're actually at risk of getting hit. Unlike many of the other builds on this list, which either have a powerful larval form but a weak adult form, or a powerful adult form that can only achieve this after enduring an extremely vulnerable early game, the dragonfly is a high-tier predator in both forms.
Oh, word.
While everyone knows they dominate the skies when they reach their max level, what you might not know is that as nymphs, dragonflies are one of the most vicious aquatic builds in the game, able to one-shot similarly sized fish and amphibian players. Now, while it was tempting to put dragonflies in S tier, they do have a few shortcomings. While they are generally able to see approaching predators before it's too late, they aren't particularly good at avoiding accidentally flying into dangerous situations. They're easily trapped by spiderwebs and are often snatched out of the air when flying too close to another player. In addition, dragonflies cannot walk, meaning that their energy-expensive flight ability is their only option if they need to reposition themselves.
Oh, that's tough.
Not that devastating of a weakness, but it's enough.
They solid though. They S for me. Beetles, beetles.
In S tier we have the beetle.
Beetles are they
the
data
is
tank.
The epitome of the insect build. A bunch of extraordinarily powerful abilities that seem like they shouldn't really function properly when used in conjunction with each other.
Beetles are OP.
Actually end up synergizing unbelievably well. Beetles are the premier tanks of the insect faction, with an outer cuticle sturdy enough to deflect just about any attack with ease. It has such a high AC that it can confidently plow through a swarm of aggressive ants without taking any damage. Something that even many reptiles and amphibians can't get away with.
A darling beetle?
Now, typically when a build is heavily invested into defenses like this, it has to make a lot of
beetles are real life.
Other stats.
Beetles are the only insect I don't kill. Cause they be chilling. As long as you chilling, I'm chilling. They be chilling, man. I don't bother beetles.
This is the opposite of what we see in the beetle build, as in addition to being the most heavily armored insect in the game, it also excels in several other metrics. The most obvious of which is its power stat. Beetles can obliterate their enemies in combat using powerful jaws and explosive chemical weapons. Their ability to bulldoze opponents with their forward-facing weaponry is hard to overstate. But in my opinion, their real damage potential comes from beetles which possess the ability to blast their attackers with a toxic or acidic chemical burst. I didn't even know
beetles could have venom.
But that's not where the craziness stops, because although you'd probably expect a high-power tank
to be slow, beetles be moving.
Beetles also possess the top terrestrial movement speed of any insect.
Beetles be moving.
And if that weren't enough, despite often having
the beetles that don't be moving,
mandibles,
they real life
full of
big body
chemicals, being clad in heavy armor and strapped with enough
muscle. Wait, ladybugs are beetles? Makes so much sense.
To move objects far, far above their weight.
Wait, what the fuck? This thing moving a coconut?
The beetle is still able to fly without much issue. Now, they did sacrifice one of their sets of wings for additional armor, so they can't perform the advanced aerobatics that dragonflies and houseflies can. But the ability to get from point A to point B via flight is still extremely valuable. Both for escaping danger and for reaching valuable
Where I would probably want to be a beetle.
Short,
I would want to be a
dragonfly. Beetles have essentially every ability they could ask for. They are an amalgamation of everything that makes the insect faction so powerful, and so it's no surprise that beetle species comprise a whopping 25% of all species in the game. They're so versatile and adaptable that a beetle player can find a niche in essentially any server.
Beetles
they truly are the ultimate insect and deserve a tier list of their own. As incredible as this combination of powerful abilities is,
they're probably top 3
the beetle
insects
is still lacking the most powerful insect ability of them all, eusociality. Now, I have an entire video dedicated to explaining just how broken this ability is, and there's no question that the insects that incorporate it into their game plan simply dominate
so it's
all
ants
in their
and
path.
bees are the top. Termites.
Now, technically, termites are a variant of the cockroach build.
Okay.
But they have such a unique and powerful playstyle that lumping them in with mid-tier cockroaches seems disingenuous. The termite queen is the longest-lived insect in the game, with a lifespan near that of a human or elephant. And it spends these many decades building one of the most powerful armies the game has ever seen. These termite armies are able to construct some of the most well-fortified bases in the game, giving even beaver dams and human skyscrapers a run for their money.
Now that's crazy.
Not only do they build incredible bases, but termites literally transform the map in order to better optimize their colony's ability to gather resources. They will pave paths and build ramps and bridges to important resource deposits.
No, that's fire.
This efficiency
I didn't know
allows them
that.
to support a huge army and command vast territories. Termites, despite being most closely related to cockroaches, have a combat style that is actually most similar to the spitting cobra, which, if you've seen my snake tier list, you'd know is also a top tier build.
Oh, it
Termites
spits
can
venom?
accurately fire acid from a needle-like horn on their face,
crazy.
dealing heavy damage to anything caught in its
Yo, the new
box.
Pokemon coming
Some
out,
termites
son.
opt for
Can't
giant
wait.
slicing jaws instead of acid sprayers on their head,
Not as fire,
and
though.
are crucial for defending their base from an onslaught of invaders. Termites are a somewhat imbalanced build, with crazy powerful forward-facing weaponry, but extremely vulnerable abdomens with no armor at all. This means that oftentimes, despite a larger size, they are quickly overwhelmed if they get outnumbered and flanked.
They can't handle getting jumped.
Issue, as termites are proficient at defending in a phalanx formation, which covers the weak points of individual members. So certainly not a bad enough weakness to negate the top tier status of eusociality. But this weakness does mean that I gotta give the top spot to the other eusocial insect faction.
Bees? Ants, bees, and
Hymenoptera
wasps.
is the group of insects that includes ants, bees, and wasps.
I didn't know
Unlike
they all
termites,
was
these
clinking
insects
together.
are a bit more well-rounded, having decent armor all over, and tend to have both forward and rear-facing weaponry, with most hymenopterans packing strong jaws and a venomous stinger.
Fire.
The wasp's signature buzz and yellow banding are so infamous that almost every other insect faction in the game has at least a few members trying to replicate it to gain advantage on their own intimidation checks. Eusocial hymenopterans can build extremely complicated structures without the use of tools. They can launch organized attacks containing thousands of combatants.
Yo, I'm not gonna lie, ants are the scariest shit,
cross
though.
major barriers and control territory to an absolutely incredible degree. Thousands of players will lay down their lives in defense of a colony if need be. Ants in particular are masters of both empire building and military tactics,
That's crazy.
often
Ants
having
are
to
fire,
wage
though.
war on multiple fronts while undertaking large construction and agricultural projects in their own territory. So, while beetles may take up a larger percentage of total insect variants, termites and ants both vastly outnumber any other insect build. And while I don't base my tier lists purely off of population, there's no denying that the abundance of these insects is due to their incredibly powerful strategies and their ability to bend their environment to their advantage.
Facts.
In fact, the only genuine threats to you social players tend to be invaders disguising themselves as members of their own colony, but are really there to disrupt, steal, and attack. Many spider, hemiptera, and mantis mains adopt the strategy, and are incredibly successful in doing so. As the ant troops forage and browse unknown territory, the parasites weave their way into their ranks. Something similar happens when you browse the internet without using
Nah, that was fire. that was a quick little
fighters.
Nah, that was a valid little segue. Is there anything else? Nah, there's nothing else. You feel what I'm saying though? Like, this was fire. I learned a lot. The lower tier ones, like the lower you get to the trashier ones, they really creep me the hell out. Like, they crawl my skin. They're way too buggy. But the ones on the top, they're pretty valid. You feel what I'm saying? I would personally want to be a dragonfly, second beetle, third an ant. I'm not gonna lie. Like, those are like my top. Those are like probably my top 3 insects. You feel what I'm saying? But if you guys like my reaction for anything that's like funny, insightful, any of that jazz, you know what I'm saying? Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. If you got all the way here and you didn't hit that like button and that subscribe button, what are you doing? Like, even if you cut around the video, bro, you're here. Like, we're here. Like, I'm watching. Like, do it. Like, for me, please. You feel what I'm saying? I'm going to catch you on my next reaction, dog. Love y'all. Peace out.